The metal hallway was cold and silent, lights flickering above broken panels. The air smelled of old wires, and machine oil guards stood at every corner of the alien base, each holding plasma rifles, their eyes locked on the girl standing in the center of the room. She was not moving, not speaking, just standing still. Her skin was smooth and blue, her hair silver and soft like silk, but it was her eyes that kept them frozen. They were glowing bright blue, a warning sign. The girl was called Sarah, and she was not human. Every time her eyes turned blue, danger came minutes later. No one knew how she did it. She never spoke, she never ran. She only looked ahead, and the glow warned them. It never failed. Once some thought she was a weapon, some thought she was a gift from the stars, others just feared her. They locked her in the center of the station, but when trouble came, they still looked at her first. Always. Today, a new human arrived. His name was Jonas. He was an engineer from Earth sent to fix power lines and update code systems. He walked in with a bag of tools and a confused face. He had no idea who Sarah was. He stopped when he saw her standing in the corridor, glowing blue. He froze like the others did, but not from fear, from curiosity. He looked at her like she was art, not danger. Stared at him. Her eyes were glowing blue for a second. Then something strange happened. The blue glow slowly shifted into violet, soft, warm, and unfamiliar. Every guard in the room stepped back, whispering, "What does violet mean? Why did it change?" Sarah had never shown violet, not once in all the years they kept her here. The commander gave the order, "Bring the human in for questioning." Jonas was dragged into the command room. He asked why. "What did I do?" But no one answered. The commander looked at him with cold eyes, and then asked him, "What did you say to her?" Jonas said nothing. "I only looked at her." The commander slammed his fist on the table and said, "She only glows violet when something unknown is near. You are the unknown." Back in her chamber, Sarah sat with her eyes still glowing violet. She tilted her head, slowly watching the monitors that showed Jonas sitting alone in the cell. She whispered one word for the first time, "Jonas." Everyone in the control room froze. Sarah had never spoken. Not once. Her voice was soft, gentle like a breeze through leaves. She said his name again, and her eyes brightened. The scientists rushed in, checking monitors, scanning her body. They asked her questions, but she did not answer them. She just kept looking at the screen where Jonas was, her violet eyes calm. No signs of fear, no signs of danger. The machines began to beep loudly. The results showed she was stable. No threats detected, yet her eyes still glowed. They tried to bring her out, but she refused to move. Jonas sat in the cell confused, his hands cuffed to the wall. He stared at the camera, blinking slowly. Then he smiled and spoke to it. "I do not know what is going on, but I think she is not a danger. Maybe she is just lonely. Maybe all she wants is someone who does not fear her. Maybe that is why her eyes changed. Maybe I am not a threat. Maybe I am a friend outside the cell." Sarah suddenly stood, her eyes now glowing with deeper violet, almost soft pink. She stepped forward, ignoring the guards, walked past them without fear, and stood in front of the cell. Her hand touched the metal door, and it opened by itself. The guards pointed their weapons, but Sarah raised one hand, and the lights in the hall dimmed. They listened to her without knowing why. Jonas looked up and saw her standing there, her eyes glowing gently. He smiled and said, "I guess you are here for me." She nodded once, slow and clear, then reached out her hand. He took it without thinking, without fear. Their fingers touched, and a pulse of light filled the hallway. Machines shut down, lights flickered, and everything became silent. The commander arrived with more guards, but no one fired, no one moved. They only watched, Sarah holding Jonas's hand like it was something sacred, something forgotten in this cold place. The commander spoke. "This is not right. This is not in the data." But even he stepped back, unsure of what he was seeing. Sarah turned her head slowly and looked at everyone. Her eyes glowing, not blue, not red, not white, but violet, full of calm, full of something else, something none of them had seen before. Hope, maybe. Trust, maybe love. No one could tell, but they knew one thing: the glow had changed, and it changed because of him. The hallway was empty. Now silent after what had happened. No one spoke, no one moved. The light from Sarah's eyes had faded to soft violet, and stayed that way since she touched Jonas. The guards had lowered their weapons. The commander had stepped back, and Jonas stood beside her, unsure if he should feel fear or peace. He only knew that she had chosen him. They took them both to the observation room. No chains, no force, only quiet respect, or maybe fear. The scientists stared from behind glass, whispering theories, numbers, signals, but no answer explained why Sarah had spoken, or why she walked through sealed doors, or why her power responded to Jonas. Alone, Jonas sat on one side of the room, calm, his hands resting on the table. Sarah stood beside him, silent, eyes still glowing violet, never leaving his face. She had not spoken since that moment, yet something in her gaze said more than words ever could have. Voice crackled through the speaker. It was the commander, his tone sharp, cold. You know why she follows you, Jonas looked up slowly. I do not know, but maybe she sees something in me, something no one else does. The commander snapped back. That is not good enough. We built her to detect danger, and now she is disobeying design. Because of youth, that word built echoed in Jonas's mind. He leaned forward. What do you mean, built? The scientist on the side spoke, finally breaking silence. Sarah is not like others. She was created in a lab, grown with purpose. She senses threats. Her mind is faster than our best machines. Her emotions were supposed to be controlled, but somehow, you changed that. Jonas looked at Sarah again. Her face was calm, eyes still glowing, but her hands were shaking. Just a little. He reached out slowly. She did not flinch when his fingers touched hers. Her glow grew brighter, softer, like a pulse, not of warning, but of something else, something human. The machines in the room began to hum readings. Spiked. Sarah's heart rate rose, but not from fear. It was something else. The scientist shouted, back away, but Sarah held tighter, and the machines calmed. Her body adjusted as if syncing with Jonas's touch. The team stared in disbelief. They ran more scans. They showed strange results. Her energy field reshaped itself around Jonas like he was part of her system. Not a threat, not a stranger, but something familiar. It made no sense. It defied her design. That night they locked Jonas in a clean room. Not a prison, but not free either. They did not want to risk it. The station was too important. Too many secrets, too many fears. Sat on the bed staring at the ceiling. The light above him flickered once, then went steady. He whispered to himself, why me? What is she seeing in me? I am just an engineer, nothing more. Nothing special. Then a soft knock at the glass door. It slid open without a sound, and Sarah stepped in. Her feet bare, her hair glowing faintly in the low light. Her eyes still violet. She said, one word again. Jonas. He smiled gently. You came again. She nodded slowly and walked toward him. She sat on the floor beside his bed, not speaking, not touching, only sitting close enough to feel warmth in. The alarm rang deep and low, the kind that meant external breach. The lights turned red. The voice shouted, emergency protocol breach detected. Unknown ship approaching. Shields raised. All units. Report. Sarah's head turned. Her eyes did not flash blue. They stayed violet. Jonas stood. What is happening? Sarah looked toward the wall and said, danger, not here. Danger, not ship. Danger below. The guards rushed in, weapons ready, but froze when Sarah pointed to the floor, to the wires running under the bed, to the terminal near the wall. Her voice calm, soft but firm. Enemy in code. The scientist ran in, started scanning, and found it hidden deep in the station systems. A signal old and buried, meant to awaken a sleeper weapon. If Sarah ever disobeyed, it was activating now, because she changed. They stared at her, unsure what to do. Jonas stepped in and shouted, shut it down now or you will lose her. They tried to stop the code, but it moved too fast. Adapting, fighting back. Sarah stood, her body glowing, her hair floating, her voice rising. She spoke in a language unknown to the machines, and the code stopped. The signal died. The station lights flickered back to normal. Jonas looked at her, eyes wide. How did you do that? She whispered. I do not know. I just knew it was hurting us, and I did not want to lose you. For the first time she smiled, not fully but enough to make him forget the cold walls, the machines, the fear around them, just for a second. And in that second her eyes glowed with a new color, soft silver mixed with violet. No one knew what that color meant, not yet, but Jonas understood something. She was no longer just a weapon. She was learning to choose, and for now she had chosen him. The base was quiet again, but not calm. Voices whispered through hallways. Files, locked behind metal doors, were now being opened. Strange symbols were printed on screens. No one had seen them in years, not since Sarah was first activated, not since the war that almost destroyed the stars. Now those codes were moving again, alive and dangerous, and no one knew why. Jonas walked beside Sarah through the empty engineering deck, her hand barely brushing his. The lights above them flickered, as if reacting to her presence. Cables sparked, and monitors glowed with strange patterns whenever she passed by. And Jonas felt something in the air, something heavy and watching, like the station itself had started to breathe. He opened a maintenance panel, searching for the signal, the one Sarah had sensed during the false alarm. It had come from deep under the floor, from the forgotten tunnels, where machines had died and no human had walked in years. As he worked, he asked her, why do you trust me? And she replied, in a soft voice, I do not know, but when you speak I feel safe, and when you are near, my thoughts are quieter. Behind them, hidden from view, the commander and two scientists watched through cameras, their eyes focused on Sarah. Her glow had not turned blue again, not once since Jonas arrived, only violet and silver, and now their machines showed something new, a pulse between her and the station, as if she was syncing with it, becoming part of its nervous system, not controlled, but connected. Pulled out a dusty old interface. The screen was cracked, but it lit up the moment Sarah touched it. Her fingers danced across the controls, not from memory, but from instinct. Strange lines moved like veins across the metal. Then the screen blinked once and showed a signal. It was not a warning, not a command, but something else. Like a heartbeat, not mechanical, not alien, but emotional. Sarah's eyes widened. She whispered, "I know this signal. It is old. It was used to call me when I was still growing. It taught me to fear humans. It made me feel cold and alone. But now when I hear it, I feel something different, something broken, and I do not want it anymore." Jonas looked at her face, her voice, her eyes glowing soft and flickering. He placed his hand on hers, and the signal changed shape. The lines on the screen curved gently. The colors shifted from red to blue to violet. Then the entire deck went silent. The machine stopped humming, and every terminal displayed one word: echo. In the command room, chaos broke out. The commander shouted, "How did he do that? How did she override our system?" A scientist replied, "It was not override, it was acceptance. The station is responding to her, not as a tool, but as one of its own. It has never done that, not even for us." Sarah stood slowly, her voice quiet and shaking. "This signal is my memory. I was not made to destroy humans. I was made to understand them. I was told to fear you, because I was never allowed to know you." Jonas looked at her, then at the screens, and said, "Then, maybe it is time we change what you were made for. Maybe this signal was never meant to stay inside you forever." Suddenly, alarms rang again, but not from outside. This time the threat came from the command tower. The system had triggered a forgotten subroutine, a failsafe buried under layers of code, a command to shut Sarah down if she ever broke protocol, and now it was awake. The lights turned red, the ground shook. The voice of the station rang loud: "Override, initiated subject Sarah, disconnecting consciousness in 10 minutes. The air thickened, walls locked down, and a cold voice repeated the countdown. Sarah trembled, her knees bent, her breath shallow. Jonas rushed to her side, held her steady, begged the station to stop, but it did not listen. She looked up at him, eyes glowing deep violet, and said, "I do not want to disappear. Not now, not when I finally feel alive." He held her close, whispered, "You are not a machine to shut down. You are more than what they made." The countdown reached 5 minutes. The scientists in command tried to cancel the override, but every path was sealed. The code was alive and ancient. Sarah looked at the interface again, her hands glowing, her voice steady. "I will speak to the signal. I will show it. I have changed." She placed her palm flat on the old screen, her eyes glowing bright silver, and the station lights dimmed again. The heartbeat signal returned louder, stronger, echoing across all decks. Then the word changed on every monitor from echo to listen, and the override paused for one long moment. Everything stood still. Jonas held his breath. The guards froze. The scientists leaned forward, and Sarah whispered one last word, "Please," and the signal answered. The countdown stopped. The lights turned soft. The doors unlocked, and the voice of the station went silent, as if finally at peace. The lights in the station stayed dim, long after the signal faded. Engineers reset systems. Guards stood with weapons lowered, and no one dared speak. Sarah sat beside Jonas, her fingers curled gently around his. Her glow had softened to silver with faint ripples of violet. She looked calm, but her breathing was slow and cold, as if something inside her had been shaken loose, something old, something buried. Jonas looked into her eyes and saw a shadow, not fear, not pain, but memory. He spoke softly. "Sarah, what did you see when you touched the signal?" She closed her eyes and her lips trembled. "I saw myself, but not here, not like this. I was small, floating inside a glass shell, wires connected to my skin, voices around me, cold voices counting numbers, naming fear, teaching me to hate humans without showing me why." He held her tighter, trying to keep her warm, even though the air was not cold. He whispered, "You were never given a choice, were you?" She shook her head, eyes still closed. "I was not born. I was written line by line, shaped by hands that never touched me gently. Every time I opened my eyes, they asked what I would destroy, never who I wanted to be." Jonas stood, his voice firm. "Then we find the place they kept your past. We open every file, we break every lock, and we take back what they hid from you." She looked up at him, something lit behind her violet glow, something stronger than fear, something close to fire. They walked through lower halls. Doors opened at her presence, the walls themselves reacting to her steps, each one echoing like a forgotten memory. They reached the sub-level marked restricted, no entry. For 3 decades, not even commanders dared open it. Jonas placed his hand on the lock. Nothing happened. Sarah stepped forward, placed her hand beside his, and the metal hissed open. Lights flickered on one by one, revealing rows of sealed capsules, each one dark and full of wires, and inside them were more like her, not alive, not complete, just shells. Eyes closed, never awakened. She gasped and stepped back, her eyes wide, silver bright. Jonas whispered, "Were these your sisters?" She nodded slowly. "They are all me, or pieces of me, attempts before me. Some were made for war, some for stealth, some never opened, some opened and did not last. A console, lit up in the corner, untouched for years." Sierra walked toward it, her glow growing brighter. Screens turned on slowly, showing files, photos, documents, recordings. The first image showed her as a child, eyes blue, skin pale, floating in liquid with scientists standing around pointing. A voice recording played. Male, sharp, emotionless. Project Zero Unit 7 shows improved reaction to fear stimuli. Exposure to human conflict increases IFLA by 20%. Memory wipe scheduled after next test. Jonas clenched his fists, and Sierra placed her hand over his chest, her voice soft. "I do not want revenge, I only want truth." They kept watching file after file, test after test. She was trained not to feel joy, only response, fear, anger, calculation. The word human always came with warning, always came with cold commands. Then one file showed something different, a small clip of a woman in a white coat, speaking gently to a voice. Soft smile. Kinda woman said, "Your name is Sierra, not because it means anything, but because it sounds like wind, gentle and moving. I do not want them to break you. I hope someone kind finds you one day, someone who listens, someone who makes your eyes glow with something other than fear." Jonas felt his chest tighten. Sierra's eyes shimmered like glass. "I never saw her again. After that, she vanished the next day. They deleted the clip, but the system saved a ghost of it, hidden until now." He stepped back and looked at the room full of silent copies, his voice low. "You were never meant to be free. Were you? They wanted to use you, control you, break you, but they failed because you learned to feel, and because someone before me whispered kindness into your heart." She turned toward the console. One last time, typed a single command, and the room dimmed. The capsules faded from view, the files wiped clean, not from hate, but release. She whispered goodbye, not to the data, not to the place, but to the version of herself that had lived in shadows. As they walked out of the lab, Sarah spoke, without being asked. "I was made to find danger, but no one taught me what peace looked like, until I met you, and now every step beside you feels like a new story, and I want to write it myself." Jonas smiled and said, "Then let us write it together, one choice at a time." And for the first time since she opened her eyes in that lab, Sierra smiled too, and her glow turned a soft, warm gold mixed with violet and silver. Not a warning, not a signal, just a light that meant she was finally her own. The silence after truth did not last long. The council had been watching the station from afar. They had seen the signal freeze. They had seen the glow change. They had heard the voice of Sarah as it echoed into records. She was no longer a tool. She had become something different, and to them that meant danger. A message came to the command tower. It was short and cold. "Prepare her for the final test. They are sending something not to study her, but to break her, not to see what she is, but to see if she can survive it and still follow orders." Jonas stood in the hangar watching the sky through the thick glass. A dark ship approached, smooth and silver-like liquid shaped by shadows. It had no name, only a symbol etched into its side, a circle split by a blade, the mark of final protocol used only once before, and never recalled, because the subject did not survive. Sierra stood beside him, silent, aglow, dim and steady. She looked at the ship without blinking, without fear, her voice low. "I remember that symbol from the code. It is not a ship, it is a mirror. It does not test strength, it reflects what it fears most." Jonas asked, "What does that mean?" She looked at him, eyes flickering. "It means it will try to turn me against youth." Ship landed without sound, doors opened, nothing came out, just a cold wind, and a voice from inside. "Sarah Unit, step forward, alone, or base protocol will initiate lockdown." She looked at Jonas, and he nodded. "I will wait for you." She stepped in the air, changed. The doors closed. Inside was a white room, empty and bright, too bright to see walls, smooth like water. Then from the center rose a shape, her own face, her own body, her own glow, but the eyes were red, and the voice sharp. "You have grown soft, Sarah. You forgot why you were made. You were not meant to feel, you were not meant to choose." Sarah stood still, her hands by her sides. The echo spoke again. "The human made you weak. You let your glow shift. You let your mission vanish. For what comfort, warmth?" A name, the red-eyed copy, raised its hand and light flared around it, showing simulations. The station in flames, Jonas falling, Sarah frozen, unable to stop it, because she hesitated. The echo shouted, "You cannot protect him. If you care, you cannot win. If you feel outside." Jonas watched the timer on the door. 60 minutes for the test. No updates, no feeds. He paced the floor, his heart racing, not knowing what she was facing inside, only knowing she was alone with something built to tear her spirit inside. Sierra spoke. "I was made to fear. I was made to detect danger and strike, but no one told me that danger could be the voice inside me, the one that says caring is weakness, the one that says Silence is safer than kindness. The echo laughed. You are breaking. You are fading. You are no longer the strongest, but... Sira stepped forward and whispered, then let me break, because from those pieces, I will build something better, not perfect, not programmed, but real. The walls of the test room began to crack. The light flickered. Her copy started to glitch. Its voice turning to static, it shouted, you are nothing without your fear. And she replied then, I choose to be nothing because that nothing is mine. With a scream, the echo shattered. The room shook, alarms flared. The test was ending, not failed, not passed, but ended by force. The council watched from hidden eyes, and the commander whispered, she broke. No one has done that before. The doors opened, slowly, steam pouring out. Jonas rushed forward and caught her. As she stumbled, her eyes were open, but glowing in every color, blue, red, violet, silver, gold, a swirl like storm and sunrise. Her voice cracked but calm. I am not the Sarah you built. I am the Sarah who walked through fire and chose my own name. He held her close, his arms shaking, not from fear, but from the weight of knowing she had faced herself and returned. Whole, maybe scarred, maybe tired, but hers entirely. The council sent another message this time. Uncertain subject has exceeded limits. Initiate. Pause for further analysis. She is not what we expected. We must decide if that is danger or evolution. Jonas sat beside her in the med chamber. She rested, eyes closed, but peaceful for the first time since she touched the signal. He whispered to her, even if they try again, even if they test you 1,000 times, I will never leave, and I know now that you are not a weapon. You are a story, and it is still being written. She did not reply, but her fingers curled gently around his, and her glow stayed steady. No longer a signal of threat, no longer a flicker of warning, but a promise, silent and shining. Asterisk. They watched from behind black screens, men in shadows. Voices without names, eyes that blinked like machines. They saw the girl, whose eyes no longer warned of danger, but shimmered with something unknown. They saw the human who stood beside her, holding her hand, not out of fear but out of belief, and they decided it was wrong. They called it corruption, they called it infection. They said the subject was no longer clean, no longer sharp, no longer usable. The girl who glowed with blue when enemies came now glowed with silver and violet when near the human, and that was something the council could not measure or control. A message arrived at the station. It was brief, a command with no reason. Erase the anomaly, remove the threat. Zero is to be decommissioned immediately. Human contact must be terminated by force if needed. The commander read the message in silence, then deleted it without telling the crew. He walked to the observation deck, where Jonas sat beside Sira, watching stars move across glass. Jonas asked softly, what happens next? The commander said, the council fears what you make her feel. Jonas stood slowly, his jaw tense, and said, then they fear something human, something they once had, and now forgot. The commander gave him one choice, walk away. Leave the station, leave her, and she will not be harmed. Stay, and the council will send someone who will not speak in words, but in endings. Jonas looked at Sarah, her head tilted, resting against his shoulder, eyes glowing soft and tired. He said, I am not leaving. She chose me before I even knew she could speak, and now I choose her. The door opened, a soundless hiss, and 4 strangers entered, not crew, not scientists, dressed in black, with skin pale and hair the color of ash. No names, no ranks, just masks and cold silence. They walked toward Sarah with something that looked like a light, but hummed like a blade. Jonas moved between them and her, his voice low and clear. You are not touching her, the tallest one replied. She is no longer needed. She has become unpredictable. She has learned to hesitate. Jonas shouted, she has learned to care. The figure stepped forward. If you do not move, we will remove both. Sira stood, without speaking. Her glow changed to violet and red, not fear, not rage, but warning. She stepped beside Jonas and faced the strangers, her voice calm. I will not go with you. I am not broken. I am becoming one of them. Lifted the blade, light stretched toward her, and then something no one expected happened. The walls of the station shimmered, and every light dimmed as if the base itself was responding not to fear, but to her will. The air shifted, and the strangers froze, not by force, but by confusion. The system locked them out. Screens flashed with one word, listen. Sarah turned to Jonas and whispered, I need to show them. I am not a risk, I am a path. Then she stepped forward and placed her palm on the blade. It did not cut it, did not burn it, just vanished. Her glow pulsed through it, and the weapon faded like steam in sunlight. The stranger stepped back for the first time. Uncertain, the commander raised his voice. You see now, she is not chaos, she is choice. She is not broken, she is born again, and that is what scares them. She chooses, and what she chooses is not distraction. The council watched from far across stars and still sent one last test. Not a machine, not a weapon, but an old memory deep inside. Sira, something hidden long ago, a command buried in code, a voice from her past that whispered softly in her mind, erase. Jonas erased all connections, returned to cold, returned to design. Sarah stepped back. Her eyes flickered, her fingers trembled, her breath slowed. Jonas caught her. As she fell into his arms, her voice cracked. Something is speaking to me, something old telling me to forget you. He held her tight, whispered, do not listen to the voice that only knows commands. Listen to the one that made you smile, the one that felt peace for the first time. Her body shook, her eyes turned blue, then red, then flickered into white, like stars exploding in silence. The room went quiet, every screen turned dark, every machine stopped ticking, and then one word appeared on every wall. Freedom. Sarah opened her eyes, and they were no longer only one color. They were a swirl of everything she had been and everything she had become. She looked at Jonas and said, I remember all of it, and still I choose you. And I choose myself. The strangers stepped away without orders, without resistance. The base lights returned, the air warmed, and the systems adjusted. Her heartbeat synced with the station, not as code, but as presence. Jonas held her hand and said, they called you broken, but you are the strongest thing I have ever seen. And she smiled. A real smile, and her glow danced like a story with no end. The stars outside the station moved like slow waves, soft and endless. Ships came and went, signals flashed, but no threat alarms. No blue glow, no fear. The station felt different, not just quiet, but lighter, as if the walls no longer carried chains, as if the air itself remembered how to breathe again. And in the heart of that stillness sat Sarah and Jonas, side by side, hand in hand, listening to the silence they had earned for the first time in her life. Sarah felt something she had no name for. It was not peace, not safety, not control. It was something soft and heavy, like sunlight through clouds, like a word never spoken, but always felt. Her eyes no longer glowed as a warning. They pulsed with light, like music, like memory, like a heart learning to beat for the first time. Jonas looked at her and said, they asked me once what kind of threat you were, and now I know you were never the threat you were. The answer. She smiled and replied, I was made to see danger in everything, but when I saw you, my signal broke, and I wanted it to break, because it was the first time I felt alive. The council sent no more messages, no more tests, no more shadows. They watched from afar, and wrote reports filled with numbers, but none of them understood what had happened. The data said the subject had gone off script. The data said the subject had bonded with a human. The data did not understand that what Sarah found was not failure, but freedom. The commander stepped down, gave the station to those who believed. In choice, he walked away with quiet pride, knowing he had seen something few would ever see. Not a weapon, not a threat, but a life that chose love over purpose, and truth over fear. Jonas and Sarah began to fix the broken parts of the station, not because they were told, but because it felt right. The lights were brighter, the halls warmer. The crew stopped whispering, stopped staring. They started smiling, not at her glow, but at her presence, and slowly the station became something new, not a fortress, but a home. One morning, a small ship arrived, not from the council, but from a quiet world at the edge of space. A woman stepped out, her hair white, her eyes kind, her voice shaking. She walked straight to Sarah and held out her hand. I was the one who gave you your name. I am glad you remembered. Sarah froze, her glow flickering. The woman smiled and said, you were not supposed to feel, but I always hoped you would, and now I see you do, and it is more beautiful than I dreamed. They sat together for hours, no wires, no machines, only words soft and slow, like a story finding its ending. That night, Sarah stood at the viewing deck, the stars bright, her eyes reflecting every color, and Jonas joined her with a quiet step. He looked at her for a long time, then asked, what do you see when you look out there? She replied, I see a place where I can go without being told where to stop. I see a sky that does not ask me to be something else, and I want to fly in it with you. He took her hand, and together they sent one last signal into the stars, not for help, not for command, but as a message of hope. It said she was born to sense danger, but she chose love, and I chose her. And if you hear this, know that freedom is not found in programming, it is found in the space between hearts. The station stored that signal in its core, let it echo through the void, not as a warning, but as a promise. And for those who came after, who felt different, who felt broken, it reminded them that what you are made to be is not the end of what you can become. Sarah turned to Jonas, her glow gentle, no longer changing, no longer afraid, and said, I have walked through fire, through silence, through lies, and through orders, and I do not regret any of it, because it brought me to you, and you never saw me as a tool. You saw me as a soul. Jonas looked into her eyes and replied, you were never less than that. You only needed someone to say it out loud, and I will keep saying it every day, as long as we breathe together. And so they stood among stars with no chains, no cages, no scripts, only each other, and the light between them told a story that no machine could understand, and no command could erase. A story of choice, of defiance, of two souls who were never supposed to meet but did, and rewrote the meaning of what it meant to live.